What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of At a Glance, a series in which I give you an appetizer sampler or glimpse into a particular faction in 40k. And the goal behind it is to help you decide if you want to look further into the Force on your own, or maybe even start collecting that Force as well. So up on the chopping block this time is going to be another Necron Dynasty. I was going to do a redo, but after quickly answering a comment asking if there were other dynasties that use a different color aside from green for their energy, I thought, why not actually do a ramble on another dynasty that does so? Now, green looks great, but variety is the spice of life, right? So there are others. One example would be Sekimtar, who have orange energy similar to Mefrit. That's all we know about them. But another one that's worth bringing up is a pretty cool dynasty that really is not too well known. It is a dynasty that really could use some freshening up, some further information on, because they're pretty cool. And it's a dynasty that the 8th edition codex only has one really good image of, and it's an artwork piece. The 8th edition codex has an example of Necron Warrior painted up as this dynasty, which is Thokt, but it's in essence kind of wrong. And I say that because I did some digging. So two of the images I took from my cell phone, I took some cell phone pictures of my 5th edition Necron Codex. And there are two examples of Necrons from the Thokt Dynasty. And you'll see them. It'll be one's an Immortal, one's a Necron Warrior. And it's a very different look comparatively to the Thokt Dynasty Necron Warrior in the 8th edition Codex. The 8th edition Codex gives him green energy, which isn't correct. It also does the body a bit of a different color, which admittedly you could do if you wanted to. But it does do a cool thing with the base, which is like a dark bluish, almost purple style of earth on the base. So kind of reminiscent of their core worlds. But anyway, the Thokt Dynasty is a very cool dynasty. So let's first talk about their color scheme, since I've rambled on long enough. So we know enough, actually, assuming they're not going to change what we have from the 5th edition codex, and it doesn't look like they're going to. So what we know is the base Necron Warrior is what's described as a dull metal. The Thokt Dynasty warriors are actually described as having their like dull metal faces or dull metal skulls, which is one way of putting it. The dull metal is also, you could say, a tarnished metal. So that's why I'm saying, like, having it just being that dark silver doesn't quite work out 100%. The way you could do this kind of dull metal approach is some like brown or sepia wash or a combination thereof, and then just watering it down and building it up over the model where you see fit. And you're not trying to make it look dirty or rusty. You're trying to make it look tarnished and dull, if that makes any sense. So that's the base warrior color. The central chest piece, which has the Necron symbol on there, that backplate is black, basically. Their weapons are black. Their energy is blue. This kind of pale azure blue. Very nicely done. And what's interesting about the energy is that it's specifically described as emanating this blue energy to emanate from the Necrons, from their weapons, from their eyes, from parts of their body, even cracks in their mechanical forms, not just the torso, ribcage area, but any like joint or potential crack in them can emanate this kind of blue, hazy, misty style of energy that's coming out of them, emanating from them. And this energy color isn't just because it looks cool. This is from harnessing the potent void rift radiation that surrounds the planets in the hierarchy deeps of this dynasty. This potent radiation is in the sky overhead. It's all around them. It's what their tombs basically feed off of. And the cryptex have fashioned rad receptors into the tech of the Necrons to harness this radiation. And That's pretty cool. It means organics that get close to them get weakened. They get basically radiation sickness. Uh, no rules for that, but still pretty cool nonetheless. So that's the basic warrior. What we know is that things like vehicles and things like armored up immortals and overlords and the like um, are going to have more than just that basic metallic color. Monoliths, for example, we know them to be colored up. We know the flyers and destroyers and all that. So the Thokt Dynasty uses a really dark gray, near black, dark blue, you can almost do as well. And we see that in this one 5th edition image I took of with my phone, of course, as I said, of a Necron Immortal with a Tesla carbine. He's got like a black body, like really heavily armored up, blackened body. And his head is more of like a dull metal almost, a little cleaner than a Necron Warrior example art and all that, but that is the secondary coloring of the Thokt, basically, is this really dark, near black color. So knowing that, you would know what to do with their monoliths in primarily. You would know what to do parts of their flyers in, parts of the destroyers in, and so forth. So we have their color essence basically summed up here. And I don't think it's really going to change, truthfully, if any new fluff comes out. So we got their visuals. We understand why their energy is blue. It's radiation energy. With all that said, what we don't really know is how they go to war. We do know that they harness the barely containable power of the Haraki Void Rifts, as they label it as an icy, baleful power. So they unleash it upon their foe, probably with doomsday weaponry and the like. So maybe they use a lot of big, bad, nasty weapons. Maybe they rely on heavy firepower. Maybe they're a bit defensive because of it. I don't know. But we do know that they are Necrons. All the Necrons share similar racial traits, you could say, of hating non-Necrons, basically. So there is that. But on top of that, we know that they have this rad energy emanating from them. We know that their energy is blue. We have their look kind of down pat. And we understand that they do use this kind of more out there power known as the Haraki Deep Void Rifts, or at least the energy from those things to unleash upon their foe, not just from the rad receptors, probably from doomsday weaponry as well. So pretty interesting stuff that way. So as a no-brainer, of course, the Necron Codex is the way to go for these guys, but because they don't have a dynastic code, if you want to use a dynastic code with your Battleforged force, you have options. This is basically where we would do things similar to chapter tactics with successor chapters. You pick the appropriate chapter tactic. In this case, with the dynastic codes, they're not successors or anything of another dynasty. They're their own dynasty, so you have more freedom of choice. There's 5 to choose from. I recommend looking at one of these 3. Mefrit's Solar Fury, Nihilak's Aggressively Territorial, or Sawtek's Relentless Advance. The Nefrek Translocation Beams are an honorary mention as the 4th of 5, but the 3 I mentioned prior really are good ways to represent Thokt, whether they're representing the rad energy being harnessed by the receptors to enhance their shooting in some way, or you're representing their more stand there and shoot prospect that they might have. Whatever it is, you are, I think, in good company with one of these 3 dynastic codes to represent Thokt's way of doing things as we know it thus far. So with that said, when it comes to collecting Thokt Dynasty, any models, any bits, kits, and stuff from GW or Forge World is going to work just fine. It's less special models or special conversions, because you can't really do too much that way with the Necrons anyway, and it's more so how you paint them up. The nice thing is, being Necrons and how the dynasties are large across the board, even the lesser dynasties, which the Thokt Dynasty is that it's really open-ended for how you want to field them. There are some dynasties that really make a certain preference for, let's say, up-close killing or long-range killing or whatever, but even there, you can have the ranged weapons or the melee weapons to assist. So you have a lot of leeway when it comes to the dynasties. And with Thokt, the being that we know very little, the sky's the limit. So that's kind of cool. When it comes to painting these guys up, once you collect what you want to collect, not the most difficult thing to do. How dirtied, or I should say how tarnished and dull you do your Necrons is up to you. The Warrior is a vastly different shade on the metallic and dull effect than the Immortal, for example. So it's really up to you how you want to do it. But there's two things. A, we have to remember their energy. Not only does it emanate from their being like all Necrons do, but this one is kind of a sickly, mistly emanation that comes from their joints, comes from their weaponry, comes from their ribcage, even comes from cracks in their mechanical body. So if you had like a battle damaged one, for example, it would emanate energy out of those cracks. Kind of disturbing and cool. So how far you want to go with that, of course, is going to be up to you, but that's something to always keep in mind. Remember, it's radiation. So you can represent that on the base, maybe having their footsteps burned into the ground if you want to do something like that amongst vegetation, or have like a quarter of the base where they're standing is all kind of radiation burned, and still like dead vegetation or what have you, all black and gray and kind of like just hardcore over the top pop culture radiation burn stuff. And then the rest of the base is lush, if not like a foresty base or whatever. The choice is yours. There's some interesting basing potential if you want to go that route with these guys. But their energy is blue. So you have two choices like you typically do with any type of Necron energy that isn't green. You could paint over the green energy clear pieces we get, or you can go online, particularly into a certain Etsy storefront, and find conversion pieces, conversion kits to buy for the monolith and for all the warriors and destroyers to convert them to using a different colored rod. It's up to you, but we're talking blue energy here, which would be pretty easy to paint in comparison to like an orange, or if there was a yellow or whatever, right? So it all depends on whether or not you want the energy to be opaque, right? The whole green tube thing is cool to me, and I like those things, and I like the idea of getting the conversion to the proper color because they're this translucenty, transparenty color, and it's different, right? If that doesn't matter to you and you're okay with being opaque, I recommend giving it a shot of painting it up first. Because if you mess it up or it's not to your liking, you weren't going to use those green rods anyway. So try painting it first, and then from there you can get some acrylic rod from an arts and crafts store of the appropriate color, go to a certain storefronts online and find the conversion pieces for your Necrons and your monolith and all that of the appropriate color, in this case blue. But at least try painting it first, unless you don't want it to be opaque. If you want it to be that kind of transparency color like the green rod is, then you're going to have to go and buy a blue colored stuff anyway. But that's my recommendation there. So with that all said, that's the Thokt Dynasty. As an at a glance, yeah, but also we kind of know what I said is basically most everything that we know about the Thokt Dynasty. So this radiation energy infused into their energy of their equipment and all that is really cool. That's why we have this interesting green, blue, I should say, over the green. And it's funny because pop culture tends to show radioactive energy as green, and here we are doing it as blue. And also, food for thought, Mechanicum rad stuff typically is showcased in blue too. So interesting. Anyways, no relation, just interesting. Anyways, that's it. So thanks for sticking through it. If you have any questions, comments, or requests, leave it in the comment section. And until next time, take it easy.